The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the once starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions, how's it going?
I came this close to going back and watching Tim Burton's Batman to try and figure out how I could sing the introduction of this episode, because no Batman is...
It's not this Batman.
It's super not this Batman. It's not any of the Batmans that anyone thinks of in this day and age. When you say Batman, they think the Christopher Nolan Batman. Maybe they think, Batfleck. They think the 1990 Batman, right? Or 89, the movie. But no Batman is the Adam West Batman, right? And that's the only one that gave us a good hummable song.
And that's the thing, right? And so I was actually, I have a note on this that I was going to say for audio, but I'm going to drop it now, which is, so the thing is that, you when you think of Batman, you think of no Batman. But if I said what's the Christopher Nolan's Batman? Give me that theme song. Yeah, same as all of the late 2000s theme song. So the thing is, the main reason that Batman suffers for this is because he never had a score written by John Williams.
That's fair.
Yeah, because if I say to you, give me the Superman theme.
Da, 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 da.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, exactly, right? Everybody knows that one. And apparently Batman got a good one in the 60s and then nothing.
Although, I think Danny Elfman did the music for the Keaton Batmans.
That sounds right.
I think so. And that music is actually pretty, and I can think of it. I could tell you how it goes. The problem is it's not hummable, because the horn part, I think they're probably French horns, but the horn part for the Superman theme is very hummable, right? If you were just walking down the street and you went, da, 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 someone across the street would go, da, 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 because they know, right? It's that kind of iconic. But if I hummed the beginning of the Tim Burton Batman song, it wouldn't, it's not a hummable song, right? It's just not.
It's not. Like I said, no fault of Batman. I'm just saying that, it's the difference between having hero music and superhero music. That's all I'm going to say.
Ooh.
At me, Batman fans.
Well, I feel like it's pretty obvious that we played a Batman.
Yeah.
The thing about this game is this is Batman the video game, which is a movie tie-in to the 1989 Michael Keaton Batman film, directed by Tim Burton, music by Danny Elfman, right? This is on the Game Boy, but I had this weird feeling, and maybe you can clear this up for me. I didn't go look this up, so if you remember off the top of your head, I'll be excited. Do you remember the other game that we played where during the episode you were such and such movie tie-in, and I was like, oh my god, you're right, this is a movie tie-in game?
GoldenEye.
Yes. Thank you, God.
It was
I would have to
GoldenEye.
listen to 400 hours of podcasts to track that down, so thank you.
Yeah, no, I remember that distinctly, because I just remember saying something movie tie-in game, and just I remember the look on your face. It's your eyes went wide. And oh my god, this is a movie tie-in game. Yeah.
And so that's the thing that I think is kind of interesting, is that a lot of the Batmans are tie-ins, and I don't mean they're an established character, right? That's not interesting, but this is specifically the plot of the 1989 Michael Keaton Batman movie.
Yes, you fight Jack Napier.
Yeah. There's later on the Game Boy Advance, there was a Batman Begins, which is the Christopher Nolan trilogy. There's a Batman the Animated Series, which follows the story of Batman the Animated Series. There's a Batman Beyond game, which follows the story of that cartoon, because these are all also comics, obviously. But I think the Batman series, to his credit, right, Superman unfortunately cannot make this claim, is there are so many Batman games that they're not all movie tie-ins.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
No,
like the most famous for our generation, like the most famous Batman games are probably the Arkham series.
Yeah, and that's just Batman.
Totally standalone, right?
Yep.
So I had this weird kind of like, oh, this is a movie tie-in game, but it's Batman. So it's like kind of okay.
Yeah, Batman is one where the video games are really hit and miss in the sense of, it's some of them are very shovelware, some of them super aren't, and it just depends on who was kind of taking over the game development, the franchise, and kind of what their goal was and probably what their budget was. Because if they blew their entire budget on the getting the rights to Batman, then you're toasted. I will say that
also I did lie. The most famous Batman game of our generation is probably Lego Batman, and then second would be the Arkham series.
Of our generation is probably
let's say of the modern era.
Okay,
maybe.
All right.
Okay,
I was going to say our generation.
For us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will say too, just to already run afield, is I think that the thing that the Superman video games suffer from is not necessarily being shovelware, is the fact that it is so hard to deal with making a good Superman game in the same way that it's hard to deal with making a good Superman comic or story or movie, or it's like, well, he has all the abilities. It's like, okay, well, we got to make a video game. So how are we going to do that? It's like, well, I mean, he's kind of invincible and super fast, super strong, and heat vision and cold breath. It's like, cool, but like there needs to be conflict. Like, I don't know how to do that,
Sorry, we don't have any of that actually.
Yeah.
Plumb out of conflict.
Yeah. And it's idea of zero on conflict. And I think we've spoken on the show about our ideas for a good Superman game. So we can just blow right past that and go to do you need to do the bio stuff, or do we go to shelling?
I mean, it came out in 1990, but I do need to talk about my nostalgia experience because
that's right, nostalgia. I knew I was skipping something.
I knew part of this was unimportant to me. I did actually play this game, and I don't say that lightly, because there's like, from this era, because of the very successful movies and the very successful cartoon, and Batman was kind of having like a moment in the sun. It's like, I don't know, between 6,000 and 10,000 Batman games that came out at this time. So I had to actually look pretty closely at some screenshots and at the manual. I was like, okay, I've played, of the like 10 that I looked up from this era, I was like, okay, I've definitely played like these two. I think I've played this one, and like these 4 I've never even heard of. This one I'm kind of not positive about, right? And that kind of influenced like which of the games of this generation I voted for when we were selecting this title. So I did play this, and unfortunately for Batman, because this was a Game Boy game, this was I'm waiting for my turn on the real console game, where I would borrow my friend's Game Boy, play Batman or Super Mario Land or a lot of the other Game Boy games that I played, and then it's like, oh, now it's my turn to use, the Super Nintendo or the N64 or the PlayStation or whatever, and then I would, hand off the Game Boy. So my nostalgia for this is kind of like the way I think a lot of folks would think of like modern like clicker games on their phone, where it's like, oh, I'm waiting in line. I was playing video games while waiting in line to play other video games, which is kind of ridiculous, but I have played this game before, so that felt good, because if you reach your hand into the barrel of Batman games, there's like a better than chance that you're going to pull out a game you've never even heard of, because there's just so many. There's so many. There's
just so many games.
This wasn't the only Batman the video game movie on the Game Boy. Right? Like more than one company got a crack at this. So that's how thick that barrel is with Batman.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, Batman, it makes money. So my nostalgic experience for this is, this is one that I borrowed from a friend, and I didn't get to play it a whole lot, but I really kind of enjoyed it. I would play it, on my Game Boy when the batteries were keeping pace. When we'd go on road trips. Oh, sorry, no, wait. I'm thinking of Super Mario Land. I'm getting those two things confused for reasons that may become obvious later. No, I never played this game before.
That's fair. And like I said, I mean, if I said here's every Batman game that came out in like even just a 2-year span, and even if you were a Batman super fan, there's just so damn many. In fact, the sequel to this game is Revenge of the Joker.
The sequel to this game?
The sequel to this game is called Batman Revenge of the Joker.
It's different. Wait, okay, hang on. So
yes, it no longer follows the movie.
That's crazy, right? I mean, am I like having a mental breakdown? So the fact that they did a movie tie-in game where they were like, we're going to make this into a movie, and then there's so many Batman games that there's an alternate reality for the video game, right? Explain to me how this doesn't prove multiverse theory and that we're in an alternate weird timeline, because there is just no way that the prime timeline, like we're 3 standard deviations off the central finite curve, like, right? We got to be more than that, because that's weird, right? That's super weird, right?
I mean, I feel like it's only weird in movies, TV shows, and video games because they're so expensive to make. The multiverse has been a comic book thing forever. Like, it cracks me up to think that like our parents' generation made fun of us because they're like, how do you keep track of all these Pokemons? And it's like, how did you keep track of the difference between Amazing, Fantastic, and Superior Spider-Man? Like, how did you read all those comics at the same time, and yet you always knew that like this Peter Parker is in this situation and that Peter Parker's in a different situation. They're so obviously different. Sorry, not superior. Ultimate. You know what? There probably was a superior Spider-Man, and he was a jerk.
I don't think there was a superior Spider-Man. I think there was an above average Spider-Man.
B plus. Now we show.
Now we show.
Now?
Yeah,
now we show.
Yeah.
So I actually got 95% of the way through this game on stream, and a lot of nice people hanging out. So if you ever need proof that we actually play these games, not every single Nostalgia Goggles game makes it to stream, but the vast majority of them, especially lately, have been. And this game is short, like it's super short. So in one sitting, I was able to get through like almost the entire thing. A lot of swearing at a couple parts, but you know, good progress was made. You could also reach out to us on Twitter, and you could leave reviews on Apple Podcasts. Oh, I meant to tell you, I'm going to tell you this like live right now. So
cool.
It's a real pain to see all of your Apple Podcast reviews all at once, because they make you look at each country's reviews individually, because the store for each country is separate for insane legal reasons that have nothing to do with podcasts and have everything to do with music and movies, but it's all the same storefront. So I was like trying to find this one review that I knew was in there. And so I was like clicking between, I was like, oh, maybe it was a Canadian review. Maybe it was a UK review. So I'm like clicking through different countries, and normally people say very nice things, and it you know, fills our hearts with the warm fuzzies. And I just happened to find this one review where it was just 1 star. They didn't like Super Metroid. and I was just like, no, George didn't like I love that game.
Yeah. Wow. So that's amazing, because like that means that my disdain for it was so deep, and that the well of that was so deep that it like drew you into it, you know? So like,
yeah, totally.
Like, yeah. So you still loved it, but now the perception is that you did not. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
So that was funny, but you know, we appreciate that kind of feedback. Ideally, it's positive, but you know, if you've got bad things to say, you can leave reviews, or you know, maybe just reach out on Twitter, have a discussion with us before you go and you know, rent a billboard that says you suck because you didn't like Super Metroid.
No, we had that one guy who reached out to us on Twitter and said like, "Hey, I really like this podcast, even though I disagree with everything that you're saying." And it's like, "Hey, man,
yes.
As long as we're all having fun."
I believe he said, "You have much stronger opinions than I do."
Yeah. But that was after I said, like, dude, as long as we're all having fun, having a good time, that's all that matters. And he was like, yeah, you know, and then, yeah, it was all good.
We're all just middle-aged guys playing video games here. But yeah, so that's, you know, however you choose to go out in front of your house and get picked up by the police, we appreciate that. And if you want to, you know, kick in a little of that cheddar, right? We don't have that sweet Bruce Wayne money. So if you want to, you know, you want to give us a little bit of money.
Kent money.
Yeah. So if you want to help us out, make like a tax deductible donation. It's not. Then you can find our Patreon in the show notes. And if you contribute up at certain levels, you can get your name shouted out on the show. So we have to shout out our 8-bit classics and 16-bit heroes. And our 8-bit classic is John H.,
possessor of the bag of holding.
And our 16-bit heroes, Michael S.,
wielder of the Holy Avenger.
David S.,
wielder of the Mace of Disruption.
And Jacob K.,
keeper of the Eye of Vecna.
Ooh.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, actually. Like, it's a powerful thing, but it's not great to have it.
So, somebody's got to keep it.
Ideally Vecna.
Vecna would say that.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. This is a Game Boy game. We got to talk about its visuals. You follow Video Game Donkey, right?
I do. Sometimes.
Yeah. He's got a good little joke that sticks out in my mind where he's talking about how in some modern games, like the character takes up way too much of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And he shows a clip from one of the Arkham games. And he's like, a third of this screen is the Batman zone. Get out of my way, you Batman. And this game has so much the opposite of that. Like, you're a little teeny tiny Batman. Like, almost the entire screen is dedicated to the level and where the enemies are and where the platforms are. And lest you think that's a Game Boy thing, very soon after that, they spent way more screen real estate on making Batman look very Batman. So, like, the fact that in this game, they were like, well, don't you need to be able to see what you were doing? I appreciated that.
Yes, no, the Batman he's basically a token, like he doesn't look like, the Bat. He looks like, and this is kind of where I started to draw the corollary, looks like small Mario,
He kind of does. He's got cute little bat ears sticking up.
He looks, honestly, if you said, this is Mario in a Batman costume, like, if you were playing Super Mario Land and you hit a question mark box and a little like bat popped out and you touched it and then turned into this, would it be like disjointed? Like that would feel okay. But that being said, that's not a slam on the game. It to say that they took a card out of the Mario deck is not. Mario knows how to make him some video games, right? And so, no, 100% agreed, especially on something that is so focused on platforming. You need to know where you're going. I can't imagine if anybody would have, made like a game, I don't know, where you were like some type of a predator or, a hunter, and you took up so much of the screen that you couldn't see where you were jumping or where you were going. It's not Jurassic Park. It's not Jurassic Park, right? You're not the Velociraptor in Jurassic Park. You are the Batman. So no, you don't. I guess it does technically detract from the fantasy of being Batman, but nah, man, it was the call. 100%. Could not agree more.
Okay, this will. I don't know how this can't come up later, but I just feel like this is such a good moment to mention. No, I think solving all of your problems at the barrel of a gun takes away from the fantasy of being the Batman. The fact that you are tiny is actually secondary to the gunplay. But that's mechanical, so we'll get there.
Yeah, so yes, agreed. And that's actually my top note on visuals was you use a gun instead of throwing batarangs, which is hilarious because you can get a power-up that makes you throw batarangs. So why wasn't that the default? I don't get this decision making like at all, So, and we'll get into this more into mechanics. They have a number of different power-ups that make your gun function differently. And one of them is that it gives you a batarang power-up, which is cool because not only does it do a bananas amount of damage, but it also goes out and comes back, right? Which is great. But you could still have all the same stuff. You could still have all of the same power-ups, everything else. Just make them all batarangs. They've shown that they can do this, including iron stones that are batarangs.
Yeah. The woodman shield of batarang leaves that go around you is is pretty weird when you also have a gun that fires batarangs, but only sometimes.
Yeah. Again, I do not understand that choice. And I mean, they even had to spend more time look, it could have just been Batman standing there and then he just fires batarangs, but instead they literally had to paint a gun on him and then you shoot volleyballs. It's just so weird.
And I do want to be clear that at least for me, I don't mean to speak for you, but I think I can speak for you in saying this is very much still a visual concern, right?
Yes.
It's what it looks like that when Batman is Batmaning through the levels that he has a gun up in front of him all the time.
Well, especially because, and I don't know whether, and this is definitely running into mechanics, but we might as well just hit on it here. I don't know whether I assume this is because of processing power and like how much stuff could be on the screen at the time, maybe, but then they have those bullet hell sections, which would seem to refute this. With at least some of the power-ups, it's determined by like, it will only have one projectile or two on the screen at a time, right? So, once it hits a thing, you can then fire a new one. I know this because when you're fighting Jack Napier, and as he gets closer to you, you fire, and like you can get off like a million bajillion shots. So like if he's like right up onto you, right? The reason why I bring this up in visuals, because I might touch on it again in mechanics, is because if you're like throwing batarangs or whatever those bolio, what are those called?
Bolos.
Yeah. Bolos. Yeah, that was close. Bolos or whatever, right? Then that's one thing. When you are rapid firing your gun into like you are unloading it like an AK-47 into his crotch, and somehow
he is giant.
Yeah, because I was ducking because he normally when he fires his gun it's at like chest height. So the best thing to do mechanically is to duck and to continue firing your gun. So I don't know like why he isn't just nothing left but a pelvis wearing a belt. Like I counted this. Anyways, it's weird. It was a really, really weird choice. And I don't know why they did it.
I don't know because I didn't check. But this feels like they thought, how can we make a fun game that is a tie-in to this incredibly well-known property, right? The super successful movie. And this is what they came up with, right? Because you could reskin this and the game would probably still be just as fun, right? If this was Simon from Castlevania, if this was Ryu from Ninja Gaiden, like if this was just I don't know, like dude who solves all his problems with a gun, like you would probably still find this game as enjoyable or not as you would anyway, because the game is the game. The fact that it's Batman is like set dressing, right? And so it almost feels like this game was maybe like partially in development, or they had these assets or the engine or something, and they were like, hey, Warner Brothers or DC or whoever has tasked us with making a Batman game to tie into the movie. So what do we got that we can get out by the deadline, right? And I don't mean that in like a shovelware way, but I can't think of a legitimate reason you would say, yes, Batman, the gun, right? It's the guy with the gun.
Yeah, it's the guy with the gun. Unless like the guy like just like read one of the alternate universe comics where Batman does carry a gun. I agree that this may be a Die Hard 2 situation, but even still. They animated, like there is an animation, a gun animation with the Batarang, it's just, it's right there. Also too, so this is similar, which is the puck that you fire when you're not firing Batarangs, it doesn't actually originate from the gun. It originates from your like chest.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, which I assume is so that way in case you're all up on's a bad guy, you don't fire past them. So I believe that that's for mechanical reasons, which makes sense. It would make more sense if it was like a batarang, because then you're throwing them, and it would make sense for you to be throwing them from like chest, like because your arm's bent and you're throwing these batarangs, right? So it's almost like somebody. So I agree. I think it's probably a Die Hard situation, but it's almost like somebody said he's got to have a gun, and it's like, okay, but we've got these batarangs. Nope. It's a gun.
In that like animation's defense, I would say that is almost definitely a resolution artifact, because when you and I play these games, we play them at Super Game Boy size on modern television. So when you slap a Game Boy game into a Super Game Boy cartridge and then you put that on a modern television, your eyes were never meant to see it like that, right? So I would say that if you saw it on a proper Game Boy screen, you'd be like, oh yeah, it's coming out of the gun, and if they're close to me, I can still get them, right? And it looks wrong blown up, but it feels right on the small scale. Kind of like think coyote physics for bullets. Like, it has to come out of his chest so that you can hit enemies that are approximately like right up on you. But then when you see it on your modern television in the Super Game Boy resolution, you're like, what? Where is that bullet coming from? Does he have shoulder mounted cannons and he's just waving that gun around to be threatening?
I mean, I think that he's firing batarangs, just is waving the gun around,
I'm Batman.
To be fair, if he's trying to strike fear into Gotham, then yeah, I mean, if he threw a bunch of batarangs and then waved a gun around menacingly, but I'd be like, you are insane, and that more. You are now coming across as more insane than a person dressed up like a bat beating me up. Like, this is, it's almost a hat on a hat. Have you ever heard the phrase cowl on a cowl? So, yeah. Okay. So this is a relatively minor thing. So they have a health bar in this game instead of hit points. Now, maybe I didn't get enough of the nuance of the game. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but you have 4 hit points, right?
I don't know if it's exactly 4. I wouldn't put money on. No, it varies because some enemies do more damage or less, but I feel like some enemies do more damage or less.
I'm pretty confident that you can take 4 hits. Like, there is 4 hits in that bar, and each heart that you get recovers you 1 hit. So with all of that being said, I felt that it was an odd choice again to go with a health bar as opposed to just hearts,
Or little pips or something.
Yeah, pips, something that says, like, you have 4 hit points. Now you have 3. Now you have 2. Again, not by any means game breaking or experience ruining, but it was something that I kind of noticed. And I was like, why a health bar? And my best guess is because I don't think that type of thought was put into games like this at that time,
Yeah. I feel like it's a lot of it is, am I at full health? Am I at less than full health? Am I 1 hit away from death? Right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's on a screen this size in a game of this type. I feel like those are essentially the only 3 categories that a player is really monitoring. Like, I'm at full health. I have taken damage. The next hit will kill me. Right? And there's, a HUD UI design is like, I probably wouldn't have done a bar either. Like, I'm with you on this. Like, a bar is certainly not an optimal choice. It looks really nice. Like, visually, I think it actually like is drawn nicely into the HUD. It breaks up the HUD because everything else is words and the little bat face. But it is. I would have maybe done pips.
Yeah.
Maybe little batarangs, little bat faces, something.
I mean, because they've already animated that, so why wouldn't they use it? And the other thing on that you kind of mentioned, you kind of brought up the HUD is, and this kind of strays into mechanics, but I don't know why. And this is I know why. It's an artifact of the time. Score. Who cares? Who cares about the score? And why would you take up so much real estate on the HUD with the score? It's a Mario game. You got to have a score. And it's like, do you though? Well, you got to have lives. Do you though?
Yeah. And I mean, the stage being up there, I get.
Yep. That makes sense.
The how many lives you have, how much health you have, totally get. I do like the weapon being up there because the weapon you currently have, you can only have 1, right? So it's whatever you have. And knowing what that is matters because they behave very differently. And they persist after death. So they're not really, I mean, they are power-ups, but they almost behave mechanically like you've made your choice, right? Because if you get like the fire flower and then you die, you don't respawn with the fire flower. But if you get the power shot or the wave gun or whatever, like, or the tranquilizer, the best one, they persist after death. So looking and seeing like what weapon do I have and what level of powered up is it matters, because you will behave differently depending on what you currently have equipped, because they all behave so differently. So having quick reference for that in the HUD like that, thumbs up on that one.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. So new headcanon. What if it's not that you die, it's that you're knocked unconscious, right? So the reason why I think that that's funny is because so that means two things. One is because when you get knocked unconscious, you restart the stage over, which means that they knock you out and they just drag you back to the entrance. Like they're like, oh, Batman's here again, acting like a crazy person, waving his gun around. So they just like drag him back out, and he's like, no, I have to stop the Joker.
It's like a Venture Brothers, like like regular people are like, this is just their job.
Yeah. And so also too, then the Batman X's, because then, so then I would argue that game over is death, right? So, and if the lives is number of times you can get knocked out before that's how many concussions you can take until you die, right? Because you're getting knocked unconscious, and that is a huge issue. So I like the idea of the Batman's is number of concussions remaining before you die instead of a number of lives.
Which is actually kind of canonically accurate for Batman, because isn't Batman Beyond all about how like he just can't physically be Batman anymore? So he has to pass the cowl on. Yeah,
like he's in his 60s, 80s, 100s, something. I mean, he's old. And I say that now knowing that I am now of an age where people are like, dude, you're old. And it's like, no, I'm not, dude, I'm still young. I can still hang.
Batman was still operating at my age.
Yeah, but anyway, so yeah, I thought that the score was unnecessary. I do 100% agree, though. The weapon, the knowing what weapon you have is super critical. That being said, I am really confident that given enough time, I could internalize what all of the different power-ups mean and what they did. I didn't, and it was a little confusing, I don't have a solution to this.
Well, the reason I internalized it is, one, I looked at the manual.
I knew you did, you son of a... Sorry, go ahead.
And two, it matters way more in the last stage, because in the last stage, I think all of the weapons are available. Like you can at one time or another get them all. And there are branching paths where if you like fall down onto the lowest path and you have to platform that way, it forces you to pick up a certain weapon. So if you've been very carefully going through trying to hang on to the tranquilizer like I was, because that one is the best, then you accidentally fall down and you're like, right? Like it's demoralizing, because you end up with like the crappy one, or like the wave, which you may or may not want because it's kind of hard to deal with. But up until that point, you kind of just use the one you want, or you just use the one you have, and it's not, you can be pretty successful with any of them. But in the very last stage before the final boss of the Joker, it matters a lot what weapon you have. So because I must have played that stage 40 times before I finally beat it, like I knew exactly where the weapon I wanted was, how to get it, why I needed that weapon and not this other weapon, because of the struggle I was having with the platforming challenge. So like, yeah, you can go through, 80% of the game without having to really internalize any of those mechanics. And so you look up in the HUD and you're like, oh, I see a little N or an S or an R for Rang, Batarang.
Yep.
But it doesn't become valuable information until later.
Yeah, I definitely was a Crosby, Stills, and Nash person on the weapons, which was just loved the one I was with.
I want to talk about the environments because they're actually really pretty.
Yeah,
Like a shocking amount of detail for this little tiny screen. There's no Home Alone effect. Everything that's in the background is very clearly faded out. Everything that's in the foreground is in full saturation, so you never ever make that mistake, which is super clutch.
I like that. That's the Home Alone effect. You know?
Yeah,
because it's bad. No, and they're nice, especially considering I was actually remember at one point I was like, this is a Game Boy game, right? You know, it very much so made me question that, you know, because I was like, this looks really good for a tie-in game. They definitely put some time and energy into the stages, which is nice.
Well, there's 4 stages. There's like Gotham City, the museum, the factory thing, and then like the Batwing stages where you're flying. They all have unique foregrounds and backgrounds. The platforms are the same in all of them, which is weird. Like the blocks you can blow up, and we'll talk about those for sure in mechanics, but like those are always the same, and that visual consistency is kind of nice, but it also like breaks the theming of the different levels a little bit. The enemies some enemies only show up in certain levels, but every early enemy also shows up in the later levels, so there's like you can always tell them apart pretty clearly. There's a lot more attention seems to have gone into the environments first, then the enemies, and then last they were like, oh, also we have to draw Batman. Like his sprite really does feel the most phoned in, and you could tell what he's supposed to be because of his little adorable bat ears and his little cape, right?
Yep.
But he actually does seem kind of the least thought out, which is, you know, whatever, but like the environments look really good. Like it's almost reinforcing my headcanon of like, oh, these assets were for something else, and then they use them in this project because they're great. They're like, but they're not like, I don't know, Batman-y. Like they're just good like city environments.
I like the idea of it being like, oh man, we got this whole game pulled together. It's like, okay, good. You got the environments made, right? Yes, because this is a platforming game. It's about exploration. We need good environments. Got it. You got the enemies in there. Yep. Got the enemies. You know, got them. They're good. All right, good. I feel like we're forgetting something. What in this Batman game are we forgetting about? I don't know. No, we got the environments. We got that. Yeah. What else? I don't know, man. I think this Batman game's ready to ship. Oh no, you know. And then that's why, you know, it's like, oh wait, we never actually animated the thing. It's like, well, we have the mechanic that he shoots up in front of him. It's like, give him a gun, ship it. I have some other I have a note in visuals, but I'm going to go ahead and move it to mechanics. I'm actually pretty light on mechanics. I got a lot more in visuals.
Huh.
Yeah. So the other thing, the one other like kind of big thing I wanted to mention is there's no boss health bars, or at least
there's super not, because oh my god, such a bullet sponge. Like,
yes, like to the point where I was like, I'm doing it right.
No, I had the exact same feeling, and the final boss is even worse because it's basically, you know, you fight Jack as Jack, and then you fight Jack as the Joker, and it's pretty much the same boss fight. Visually, it looks damn near identical, which is kind of disappointing. But yeah, total bullet sponge. Health bar for the boss would have been pretty welcome.
It would have been. The only reason why I can think that they didn't do it is either A, they didn't think of it, or B, they didn't want to, you know, show how little damage you're doing with each shot, because yeah, tons of bullets. But no, definitely at one point I went full Spinell, where I was like, am I doing it right? Like this isn't, I'm not sure. So yeah, a health bar would have been appreciated. The only other two throwaway notes that I have is one is the pictures, like the actual pictures, you know, between stages that help forward the narration,
like pseudo cutscene thingies.
Yeah, really good.
Really good.
They look really good. And again, for, a Game Boy screen, I was like, oh my God, this is nice. This is nice.
Well, and there's a 1990 movie tie-in game for the Game Boy. So the Game Boy at this point is like a year old, right? Developers just learning how to deal with this hardware at this tiny ass resolution, and these little, they're like comic book panels essentially. They look really good, like to the point where when we were picking this game out and I was like looking at screenshots, I was like, are these from the same game? This little like adorable, ridiculous Batman sprite is from the same game as this like high res, like you could see the wrinkles in the Joker's forehead as the Batman's like looking at him on the monitor in the Batcave. I was like, this is the same game. This is the same game. Huh.
Yeah, no, it's just wild. And the other thing is, and this is just a personal preference, like I get why they did it, because they needed something to call out the fact that the stages were different. I don't like that little swoopy visual, like the stage spinning.
Like mode 7 thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I just saw that and I was like, I'm aware of it, like, and that's why it's just a throwaway note. I'm like, I don't like this. It's okay. Like as a critiquer, it is fine. There is nothing wrong with it. Me personally, I was like, I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm with you actually. Because you can, if you button mash, it skips it, which was nice. But I suspect it would have been less like on an actual physical Game Boy and not on the giant modern television like we were playing it. So, I'll give him a pass, but I'm with you. Every single time I would like press A to skip it because I was just like, oh God.
And I'm out for visuals.
I don't know how to say this about the audio in this Game Boy movie tie-in game. Songs are jams.
Right.
Like, absolute jams, to the point where, again, I was like, 1990 Game Boy game, that's a tie-in for an 89 movie. Like, really?
Yeah.
Like, huh.
I mean, they're like Mega Man, NES Mega Man level. At least that's what they sound like to me. Like they got, that kind of, good, man. They're really good.
A little jazzy. They're upbeat and actiony. Yeah.
I mean, the only thing that they don't have is that they do sound more like Mega Man music, not Batman music, but there is no Batman music because he's not Superman and therefore is not deserving of his own song. The point is that these songs are really good. It's
weird to compliment someone's work by being like, I'm surprised you produced something of quality. But I think this is just more, we're just piling more evidence on the Die Hard 2.
Yeah, it's a Die Hard 2.
Right? Because these songs are video game songs. They don't feel like Batman songs, right? Like the movie music is very dark and moody, and there's a lot of like swelling horns and stuff. It's not super triumphant, right? It's not hero music, but it is very Batman-y. The Christopher Nolan, it's a lot of droning and stuff, but it's very Batman-y, right? But this is like action-y, Ninja Gaiden-y, Mega Man-y, right? Kind of like like getting stuff done, like, Batman going out, boop, pow, 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 right? Like, which again feels weird, but like I enjoyed all of this music, and there's consistently different music as you go through because the levels are, thematically different. And it's all good. The boss music is like a little bit more like slow and kind of menacing. The Batwing music is like a little bit more, kind of light and airy because it's a little more energetic. Like I don't know, man. It's weird. Like, yeah. I feel really bad being like, oh, I expect to give you like a C-, and you turned in like B+, A- work. And I'm like, you earned that A-, but also I'm a little surprised.
It's kind of like somebody gives you an assignment and you're like, this is good. Oh, hey, thanks. Really good. I mean, thank you. Yeah, no, this is like, I'm really impressed. It's like, okay, my feelings are starting to get hurt.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. It's like, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I think it's just, there was, what this is? This is somebody showing up to class and giving 100% participation their last week of senior year, right? Where it's like It's a Batman tie-in game. Like, no one's expecting you to show up that last week. You've already passed all your finals. You've gotten into college. You're done. Why are you here? And it's like, you know why? Because it's the right thing to do. And it should, and even though you do not expect it of me, it should be expected. You know, even though you don't expect anything great from a video game tie-in movie, you should. And you know what? We're just going to take this video game and reskin it as Batman, so that way you can have those elevated expectations. And I think that this is Batman the video game : Die Hard 2. You know. Also, the sound effects. There was nothing in the game that I felt sound effects wise fed me any information. So, in service of gameplay, meh. But I will say that they were fine. They were enjoyable. They actually sounded a little bit like Gradius sound effects to me. You know, so when you like shot a dude, it kind of did like a, you know, kind of a thing. But yeah, I mean, like the sound effects enhanced the gameplay slightly in the sense that when something exploded, you felt like it exploded. But it didn't. It did two things. One is it did something and it didn't do something. One is it emphasized the action, right? So whatever you did, it gave it a little bit of an oomph. And what it didn't do is compete with the music. So if you've got like this, like, you know, really cool Mega Man music, you don't want a million to bajillion sound effects competing with that. So they didn't.
I don't know if I've ever told you this. Don't let this compliment go to your head, but I like that you always seem to think of sound effects first and foremost in how they impact your ability to play the game. And I'm sure, I can't remember exactly which game it was, but on some of the other Game Boy games we've played, it occurred to me that there's a really good chance you're playing this in the backseat of your mom and dad's minivan, and that they're going to say, turn that goddamn thing down now or I'm going to throw it out the window. And I really feel like a lot of Game Boy games were designed very much thinking there's a good chance this kid's going to play this with the sound either low or off, right? They won't have their headphones. They'll be in the backseat of the minivan. Mom and dad are going to say, turn that goddamn thing down right now. And that's just going to be it. There's no discussion. There's no, oh, but I can't play the game if the audio's off. So like, yes, it was early days for video games. Yes, this game in particular is very early days for the Game Boy, but I really think a lot of Game Boy games, they were like, don't, unless you absolutely must to make the game mechanically function, do not count on them being able to hear it, right? And even if you take away the stereotypes about a kid in the backseat or like, oh, I can't find my headphones or whatever, like, you're playing it out in public. Maybe you're just in a noisy area. Maybe you're on mass transit or whatever. So you're turning the volume down to just not be an asshole on mass transit, blasting your Batman Game Boy game, right? Like there's lots of reasons you can't count on like, oh, I'm in an acoustically treated theater in my house where I can do whatever I want. I think there might have been like a design directive, like I'm Nintendo and I'm telling you, developer making this Game Boy game, do not rely on your players having sound, because so many Game Boy games we've played, I'm just like, yes, there is sound. Moving on, right? And that feels like an insult, but I don't think it is. I think it's a design challenge to say you can never, ever bank on them being able to hear what the hell's going on. So you don't have that tool in your tool belt. Every Game Boy game we play will probably fall into like it made sounds. But I really cannot stress enough how good the music was.
Controls and mechanics?
Controls and mechanics. Jump and shoot, man. You're not Batman. You are jump and shoot, man.
I felt that. So one thing that I kind of want to talk about that I thought. Okay, so this game very much so is not punishing. It in many ways really gives some affordances to the player that you don't. I don't feel that you really inherently notice them as like, oh, the game's taking it easy on me. But you would super notice it if they didn't do it or did do it. So, for example, this game has no knockback, which is awesome in a platforming game. Look at Ninja Gaiden, right? There is knockback in Ninja Gaiden, and that game is notoriously difficult, not for me, but for some people. Whereas as this game, there is no knockback, which and I recognized it because at one point I jumped, I shot a guy, I didn't either shoot him enough or I missed or whatever, but then he hit me. And I was like, and that's game, Hendrix, because I was for sure going to get knocked off the ledge. And I just like took the hit and started flashing invincible and didn't get knocked back. So that's, again, that's something where it lowers the difficulty of the game substantially, but not in the, Doom way where it's like, oh, you little baby, little baby person, you want to play the baby game? So I liked and appreciated that.
If you wanted to really read way too far into the mechanical choice that you're describing, and I do.
Yeah.
The reason Batman doesn't get knocked back is because he's being grazed, right? Mm-hmm. So like, somebody takes a shot at you and Batman does like a little wicked dodge and it like clips his shoulder, right? Or his upper arm or something, or it like hits him in the side, but it's not a shotgun blast to the chest. So, because that would kill him, right? So he's taking these like grazing shots, which are causing serious damage and will eventually, defeat him. But the reason there's no knockback is because Batman can't take a shotgun blast to the chest, so he must not be. Yeah,
no, I agreed. So it is both narratively and mechanically the correct choice. Also, another thing that they do mechanically to really give an affordance to the player is after you get hit, you are invincible for a while.
Dude, those iframes just go and go.
Your invincibility lasts long enough for you to get out of any situation the game would have put you in that caused you to get hit. I really appreciated that because there was definitely a couple of times, especially when I was fighting the bosses with an infinite number of hit points, where I would get hit and then I walked past the bad guy to kind of reset myself and then he would shoot at me or something like that. And I was like, that's great because I didn't just lose another hit point of my 4 hit points, exactly 4, while I was walking past him.
In the back half of the game, you have to do some fairly tricky platforming on and off of platforms that have enemies on them. So having no knockback and a very long window of invincibility frames means if what they wanted me to do was to do a super cool Batman fire my gun while I'm jumping, right, and shoot this enemy off of the platform and then land on the platform safely, and I screw that up, I can actually survive that mistake, assuming I have enough hit points, right? Like, I can get hit in the air or land on the platform that is just big enough for the enemy sprite, take damage, and then essentially walk through it, like you were saying with the boss, and then platform off of that platform and kind of keep going.
It broadens the failure spectrum, right? Because each one of your hit points is a true singular failure, right? Like, there's never going to be a situation where you have 4 chances to fail, but you really only failed once, and then you lost all of your chances to fail all at once, right? So I've got a couple more things that I kind of want to fire rapid shot because I think it helps kind of paint a picture, and then I'll let you talk. So 1, long invincibility. 2, no knockback. 3, power-ups don't disappear, right? Which means that once you reveal a power-up, you can take your time, take your sweet time, get to it. It's not like you're panicked and trying to get there really, really fast. You also have, there's quite a few frames, and I didn't count how many, but when you jump up and then you come back down, the time on how long you're in the air and the amount of maneuverability you have is high on both, right? So it kind of creates a little bit of a swooshy, like kind of a jump, right?
How'd you feel about that? Because I felt like the floatiness was an artifact of the small screen. Because I was like, a lot of Game Boy games feel like they have this weird floaty platforming, and I think it's because you're playing on a postage stamp.
And very well may be. But I felt that plus the near infinite air control just kind of gives you, because the entire thing with a platformer, right, is that the challenge is you can move one-dimensionally. You have infinite control over one dimension and variable control over the second dimension. And it's your ability and mastery to move through the second dimension such that you can avoid danger, right? So any additional control you have over moving through the second dimension will make the game easier, right? Which is why, literally there's always a power-up in Mario that lets you fly. Because that's a legitimate reward, because it's like, oh, we have given you substantially more control over the y-axis, right? So I actually liked it just because, again, I felt that if I went to go jump, and I misgauged a jump or, was trying to hit a platform and wasn't really quite confident on my ability to do so, I could correct so many times that if I really missed it, that's on me, especially considering that if I do land on the platform and somebody, shoots me in the face, it grazes me because it doesn't knock me off the platform. And then finally, there's the one big difference between this and Super Mario Land, right? There is no time limit, right? You can take your sweet, sweet time.
Yes, that is true. And it's funny we keep comparing this to Super Mario Land because recently I've been jumping between different Mario games for a variety of reasons that aren't interesting, but some of those Mario games have timers in the levels and some don't. And man, do I prefer the ones that don't. Like, I just am too old and tired to have some snooty game telling me I have 400 seconds to finish a level. Like, get out of here with that noise.
So all that I say kind of pulls together into a game that delivers better on an empowerment fantasy, right? In the sense that you are generally more powerful. Everything's a little bit easier, right? So now whether that's because, the game was directed at younger kids, I would argue that that's hopefully not the case because Tim Burton's Batman was not, like...
That's probably PG-13, right?
Yeah, I mean, PG. Well, you know what? It may only be PG because I'm not sure if they had PG-13 yet.
Is that recent?
It's relatively recent, I think.
Okay, you keep talking.
Yeah. But anyway, so the thing is that if they're trying to deliver on the fact that like you are the bat, right? There's a number of things that you get to feel that way because you never die a stupid death, right? Just like in the Arkham games where the failure spectrum is broad, right? The failure spectrum's broad here, right? Like you've got to make enough mistakes to the point where you screwed up. You got to try that again, right? As opposed to in so many other games where you're like, that wasn't fair, right? So I do feel that it helps deliver on the fantasy of being Batman in that way, outside of the fact that they gave you a gun.
So,
yeah, what you got for me?
Okay, Tim Burton's Batman, PG-13. Movie came out in 1989. PG-13 rating was added 1984.
So I was close though.
You were. I had no idea it was that recent. So the thing I want to talk about with the platforming is, and I mentioned this in the visuals. There's the level, right? Like you're in the museum, you're in the factory, or whatever. And so there's like the world that you walk on, but then there's these little squares, and some of them are white, most of them are white, and some of them are kind of like a gray, and the gray ones have like prizes inside.
Yeah.
And that's where all of the power-ups we talked about, they're all in there, right? And so I think it creates this actually really interesting mechanic dynamic between the player and the world, where sometimes you actually don't want to destroy these platforms. You want to platform on them. Sometimes you need to platform on them and then turn around and shoot back, but you can't go too far because the screen does not allow you to scroll back to the left. So you have to like thoughtfully platform and then turn around and shoot, get the power up and then come back, right? So there's a lot of sort of interesting, weird interaction with the platforms of this platformer that are kind of like bricks in Mario games, but like the old Mario games where a lot of the world was made out of destroyable bricks, right?
Yep.
So like newer Mario games, you can't like break the whole world the way you could in like Mario 1. I kind of like this because they're platforms that you destroy by shooting them. So if you have a powered up gun, especially the wave gun that like moves in this big, sine wave pattern, you may shoot out platforms you did not mean to shoot out. and there's a couple times where they obviously very much thought of that because they will put a downgrade or a crappy weapon like between two like separated platforms with a big gap. And it's like, oh, if you don't shoot out this block, you can easily clear this gap because there's a block you can stop on midway. But if you stupidly are just, trigger happy Batman and you shoot out this block, now you may be forced to get this power down that you didn't want. Because when we were talking about the guns, they're guns, they call them spears in the manual. Because I guess it's supposed to be like the gun he uses that shoots the grappling hook.
Yes. Dumb. Disagree.
I agree. Exceptionally dumb, but I think it's dumb. Anyway, there's the normal.
Just dumb.
Yeah, just dumb. There's the normal one. There's the shot, which is the short range one. There's the wave. There's the power shot. And then there's the tranquilizer. And then there's spear up and spear down. And if you get more spear ups, then you have like the letter dash a higher number. Mm-hmm. And that's what allows you to have more projectiles on. Oh, and R for batarang. That's what allows you to have more projectiles. So if you have like R-4, you can fire 4 batarangs at once before you can't fire anymore. If you have like 4, the power shot or the short shot or whatever, like then you can have 4 on screen at the same time. And that's super clutch because then you can rapid fire from a distance, right? But then they have this interesting thing where they kind of disincentivize you just constantly firing as you're jumping around the world because you may destroy platforms you didn't mean to destroy. It's pretty well thought out. And considering how incredibly short this game is, it's only 4 stages, 2 levels per stage, I think. Whatever. It's short. I don't know, this game's not long. But like they actually dip into like, oh, well, what if there's a big gap with a platform in the middle? And that platform would make it a lot easier to get across the gap, but there's like an extra life in there. So you really want to destroy that platform, but it makes it a lot harder to get across the gap. Or what if we're going to force you down this like narrow tunnel and there's a platform you have to destroy, but it's got a crappy weapon in it. So now like you want to replay this level so you don't get forced down this stupid little tunnel, right? Like and because the crappy weapon upgrades persist beyond death, killing yourself is not a way to escape that mistake. You actually have to start the whole game over. So it's considering how short it is and how few elements they're working with, they actually combine them in not every conceivable way, but like a lot of them, like a lot of different clever ways they could say like, well, what if these things in this order? Okay, now this order. Now, okay, we're going to vary up this placement. And it's kind of like the music. It's like, you guys didn't have to put this much thought into it, but you did. And I appreciate it because it made what would have been a lame movie tie-in game like a lot more interesting.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I agreed. I do think that there was a lot of thought put into like the basically making platforming into puzzle solving, which is kind of cool. It is very, very Batman-esque. Again, I think that, they just had this game and they were like, man, this would probably make a good Batman game. Get the rights to that, probably sell more, I'm actually out of stuff for controls mechanics. Like I said, I was really heavy on visuals and just basically all of the mechanical things I pulled out were mostly in service of helped with an empowerment fantasy. So
yeah, I have 2 just throwaway random things I wanted to include. One is we talked about the visual variety in the level design, but there's actually 3 different kinds of game mechanically that happen in here, or 4. So there's regular platforming stages where you control the pace. There's the boss stage, which is a single room, kind of Mega Man Castlevania style.
You just slug it out.
Yeah, slug it out. There's the Batwing stage where it's like a little bullet hell game, and it's hard, but it's pretty fun. The final stage, the very last, not the whole stage, but like 4-2 before the final boss is auto scrolling, and that level can go right to hell. It's so unfun. And then the one other thing is the little batarang that circles around you. According to the manual, it's actually a tiny batwing, like a little tiny.
It's an iron stone.
Yeah.
It's an iron stone. Yeah, because you can You can get up to 4 of them. Like you can have so many iron stones floating around your head at a time. They make them harder to hit, which means that they're giving him bonuses to his armor class. It's an iron stone. It's not a miniature batwing. It's dumb. It's magic.
I mean, sure. It's hard to argue like which one of those things is more absurd. So why not magic? You ready to talk about whether or not it held up?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. And again, like no offense to the people who worked on this, because I'm sorry I didn't expect you to turn in like A- work, but yeah, A- work. No nostalgia goggles required. Like it's super short. It has no modern quality of life conveniences at all. No level select, no save, no nothing. Unlimited continues. You just keep throwing your head at it forever, which is nice. It's fun. I legit enjoyed playing this game. I wouldn't say like fall all over yourself to go seek it out, but like it's good. And considering all of the things counting against them, right? Early Game Boy movie tie-in, you're like, A-. Good job.
Good game. It's the the second grader at the end of the soccer game. Like good game. For me personally, same. No nostalgia goggles required. It's just legitimately fun. It's not one that's if you're in for like a game that's like a white knuckle platformer. No, it's not that. I don't want that from my platformers. I have enough things in my life that stress me out. So when I play video games nowadays, I kind of like to just play a video game. This game absolutely delivers. It's just fun platforming. Like I said, because of the broadness of the failure spectrum, how many affordances are given to the player, I never got to the point where I was like, that was dumb and wanted to throw the controller into the TV because it doesn't do that kind of stuff. It's mechanically set up to not do that kind of stuff. All of that being said is I was trying to think of how to end this show, and I want to end it on an epic note. And since Batman doesn't have any epic music, then all I can do is end with the brilliant stylings of John Williams's Superman.
I mean, we're not going to, like, we would have to get licensing rights to that.
Wait, I mean,
we're not going to do that.
Oh.
The curtain falls. The music plays. The credits roll. Then it all fades to black. And you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player 2 there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creeping with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less on how you saved the day than on all the experience gained. At the end of it all, gamers play what we play. Not for game over, but rather for what we take away. The world is sad, but who cares? We both know that that's not what you came for. Your next adventure already in sight. You're all set to go. You're excited to see what's all wrong till it's right, and the world is saved. So you're more along for the ride.